Well, hello again. Hey, a question for you. Have you ever been given an invitation to something kind of special and you completely missed it? Does that ever have happened to you? Maybe you were invited to a party. You were really looking forward to it. It was a Friday night party. You went home from work. You sat down. You had your tea, watching telly, and you kind of fell asleep. And then when you woke up, it was just way too late to go. And you so regretted missing out on the party, which you'd had full intention of going to. Or maybe there was a group of you and you decided that you really wanted to see Oasis, and the tickets were kind of coming on sale, and the group of you had talked, you'd been talking and chatting about it, saying, yeah, that would be a really good thing to do, why don't we try and get some tickets? And then basically you just kind of left it and you didn't do anything about it. And so while all of these concerts have been going on, you've been sitting at home in your jogging bottoms and your hoodie, and you're suddenly seeing all of your friends taking photographs, but right close to the stage of the concert taking place. And you kind of think, what was I thinking? Why did I miss out on something which I so wanted to be at? Well, on a very smaller scale, that almost happened to Sarah and I just a few years ago. We were invited to a dinner party by our friends called Andy and Andrea. And Andrea is the most amazing cook. I mean, she can pull together just the most gorgeous meals and present them in incredible ways. And so we were really looking forward to going to spend some time with them and obviously eating her lovely food. It got to the day, and in fact, it got to tea time, and both Sarah and I completely forgot. And so there was me. I prepared my tea, or our tea. We sat down, we ate it. We were sitting watching telly, and about 7:30, the phone went. I answered it, and it was Andrea saying, "Are you okay? You're 30 minutes late, and the food is all ready." Well, what do you do in that situation? I mean, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. So this caused Sarah and I a dilemma. We have many dilemmas in our marriage. And so as we were driving there, we were saying, well, what should we do? Should we tell the truth and tell them that we'd forgotten and that we'd already eaten? Or should we pretend that we were just delayed and eat another meal on a full stomach? Well, what would you do? Go on, tell the person next to you, what would you do if you were in our situation? Would you tell the truth, or would you try and cover it and just go for the meal? Come on. If you're watching, come on, what is it? What is it that you would choose to do in this situation? Tell the truth or pretend? Okay, let's just find out, just to get a kind of a scope for here in the room. Who would have told the truth and said that you'd already eaten? Put your hands up. Yes. Okay, then, how many of you would have just pretended and would have gone for another meal? Come on, put your hands up. Yes. Can I just ask if that's okay? Sarah, did you notice how many hands went up on that second one? All right. Okay. You see, I would have pretended and just said that we were delayed. A second meal for me, as you can see, no problem at all. No problem. But for Sarah, she owned up fully. I could not believe it as we were sitting there at the dinner table. Fortunately, I still got to eat another amazing meal. In fact, I got to eat another meal and a half because Sarah couldn't finish. So anyway, all works out well in the end, doesn't it? So that's when it almost went wrong for us. But maybe you've experienced something slightly different, a different scenario with regards to an invitation. That have you ever missed? Have you ever been missed off a list to something amazing and you find yourself kind of being excluded? You go to Instagram on a Saturday evening and you discover that a group of your friends have all gone out for a fun evening. They've gone to the cinema, they've gone to have a meal, and suddenly you realize that you haven't been invited. The invitation was never given to you. And they're having fun while you're sitting at home. I'll tell you this, to miss an event is frustrating. To not be invited is devastating. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, it's because we're into week 2 of our series called Summer Shorts, where over this summer we're looking at some of the short stories that Jesus told and explore to see what do they mean for you and for me today. And today we're looking at the story that Jesus told, and it was the story about a big event and invitations that went out. But this wasn't an invitation just about missing a dinner. No, this was about missing out on the most important invitation that you will ever get. So let me set the scene to the story that Jesus told. Jesus was at a dinner party. The dinner party, it was on the Sabbath, which is like the Jewish holy day. And it was the lead Pharisee of that area had invited Jesus to come to this big kind of special meal at his place. And these gatherings, what would happen is that the host would invite all of the who's who of the community. They would pull them together for this meal. And then basically they would talk through the big issues going on in the world, the big issues of politics, the big issues of theology. And this was the time where the lead Pharisee could kind of, just let everyone know how much he knew. So he was kind of leading this kind of conversation. And what would happen is that the meal would take place on the kind of, on one of the outer rooms of the house. And often there would be a porch. And so people from the community could come and could listen in. So they wouldn't eat, they weren't part of the dinner party, but they could observe the dinner party and listen in on the conversation. So you'd kind of think, well, why would anyone want to do that? Well, it was because there was no Wi-Fi and there was no Netflix. I mean, basically, they weren't sitting at home watching Desperate Jerusalem Wives. They weren't watching Tawig, The Only Way is Galilee. They weren't doing that. So it was part of their entertainment, one of the things which they were able to do. And so there they are. They're sitting around this table, the lead Pharisee, lots of the big names of the community. Jesus has been invited because at this point, people were intrigued by him. They were intrigued by his teaching. As he spoke about, he would keep on saying things like, the kingdom of heaven is near, or the kingdom of heaven has come. And they were really keen to find out what he meant by those words. But also, he was able to perform miracles. And so, inevitably, people were intrigued by him. And so there they were, sitting around, having their meal, talking about the kingdom of God, when one of the people kind of shouted out something, I guess to kind of make himself look good. He called out this. He called out, what a blessing it will be to attend the banquet in the kingdom of God. And with that, he was probably referring to a future banquet, a kind of heaven, was what he would have been talking about. And when he said that, everyone around the table would have been nodding, oh yeah, how great that would be, because they all thought that they were in. Because they had the kind of the route to God, because they lived good lives. They obeyed all of the Lord's. These were the good people. It was the people outside, the people listening in, not so good, probably won't make it, never mind them, good on us. That's how they would have viewed the situation. And because of that, Jesus goes on to tell a story. And so it was a story that challenged these good people, these law-abiding people. And he goes on to tell this story. I'll read out the whole story and then we'll go back over it just so that you kind of get a hold of what's going on. Here's the story. A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. And when the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, "Come, the banquet is ready." But they all began making excuses. One said, "Oh, I've just bought a field and I must inspect it. Would you please excuse me?" Another said, "Oh, I've just bought 5 pair of oxen and I want to try them out. Would you excuse me?" And another said, "I've just got married, so I can't come." So the servant returned and told his master what they'd said. And his master was furious. And he said, Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, invite the crippled, the blind, the lame. And after the servant had gone out and done this, he reported back and he said, "Look, there's still room for more." So his master says, "Forget the city, go out into the countryside. Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone that you can find to come." Who sits behind hedges? I don't know. Anyway, behind the hedges and urge anyone you can find to come so that the house will be full. And none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet. Boom. That was the story that Jesus told. That some would have just been interested in, some would have been very wound up and very cross about. Because Jesus' stories weren't just stories for a story's sake. You know, some people just love to tell stories, don't they? It's amusing, it's interesting, it keeps people's attention. Jesus wasn't doing that. Whenever Jesus told a story, it always had a kind of a different or a separate meaning to the story. So as we talked about last week, that this is the parable. That's what they're known as. Jesus' stories are known as parables. And a parable is a brief story with realistic characters and events intended to convey a moral or a spiritual lesson. Now, last week was really easy because Jesus told us what the parable meant. This one, he doesn't. He just leaves it hanging in the air, which means that we have to do a little bit of work to work out what is it that he's trying to say in this story. So, a man throws an incredible barbecue. That's what he does, a big banquet. And this host represents God himself. And the banquet that he throws represents all that God has to offer, both now and in the life to come. It's everything good that he has on offer for you and for me. So this banquet is not some small garden or small community barbecue with just burgers and sausages. Oh no. Oh no. What this man laid on was something so much better than that. This is what I imagine. Here he goes, going to come up here on the screen. I imagine good old Peter Havers is going to be there. He's got his hog roast. Okay. Zira, our lovely Indian takeaway people here, they would be providing these gorgeous Indian dishes. Okay. There would be incredible veggie and vegan options available. There would be gluten-free and lactose-free. Steve, you would be able to eat fully there. Okay. So that's good. Okay. There would be sushi for weird people. There would be massive burgers on the barbecue and sausages. There would be lamb kebabs. There would be puddings to die for. If that's what you're expecting afterwards, you're going to be so disappointed. But anyway, it was one big event. It would be the best food. It would be the best wine. They'd have brought a band in, maybe fireworks as well. It was one big event that was being laid on. And so the invitations go out, and people say, yes, that sounds great. We would love to come. They pop it in their diaries. And then the day comes, and the food is hot. Peter's sweating. The pig is hot. The table's set. Everything is ready. And so the host sends his staff out to say, okay, let's tell people to come because we're all set up. It's ready. You're going to love it. And so off goes the staff, and the staff goes to visit all of the people who have been invited. And one by one, they start to make excuses as to why they can't come. So one says, I bought a field, I need to check it out. One says, I bought some oxen, which is basically they bought a tractor, and they need to test it. Another one said, I've got married, so his wife wouldn't let him go. Anyway. Now, actually, just think about those excuses that have been made there. Nobody says, oh, I hate the idea. I don't want to come. These aren't bad people doing bad things. They're just busy. They just have other priorities. They're distracted. They focus on the urgent, not on the important. So let's be honest. If Jesus was telling the story today, he might say, the first one said, I've got a really big project at work, and to be honest, it's a bit stressful, so I'm going to have to focus on that. I'm really sorry. Another one might say, well, we've just bought a new house. We've got boxes everywhere. Moving house is one of the most stressful things that people can face, and I'm really sorry, but we've just got sorting to do. Or someone else might say, I'm really sorry, but the kids have so many different sports activities that I'm afraid we just don't have time. We've got to give kids priority. Do you hear those things being said? I'm always amused when Sarah, who's a primary school teacher, comes back from school and just tells of some of the excuses that the parents have said for why the children haven't made it into school. Now, some parents won't be fully honest, but I love the ones where they are really honest about the reasons why. Let me just tell you one or two. One child didn't come in because they had too much hoisin sauce. Honestly, yep, too much hoisin sauce. That was one. Another child didn't quite make it into school because the parents said it was too windy. Now, I don't know whether that's the weather. Who knows? Who knows? They didn't go into further detail. And this is a classic. Another one said the sun was shining through the car window on their face and it made them feel faint on their way to school. So they turned around and went home again. Now, we're all good at making excuses. Of course we are. But when did you last make an excuse for not accepting an invitation from God? We skip time because we have too much work to do, so we haven't got time to spend time with him. How many times have I heard people say that, I'd love to be able to spend time with God. Honestly, my life is just too busy. But they have time for everything else that they want to do. Or we ignore his leading. Why? Because, well, the timing isn't right, to be honest. If it came up at another time, I might be able to do that, but no, that's not for me. Or we stop connecting with church because of family commitments. And, well, I've got to go out here and I've got to do this. And we think that we're saying, it's just not now. But actually, what we end up saying is no. Is no. And the tragedy is that God offers you and me so much. He offers us his peace, which is something that we are desperate to find, isn't it? To experience peace in our lives, especially when we go through tough times. He offers us patience. He offers us his guidance. And we are invited now to experience his unconditional love, the destiny that he has for us, that security of knowing that there is more to life than this life, and that God has a future for us. But we miss out on so much. Why? Because, well, we make excuses. We miss out. And what I realize, because it applies to me as much as it applies to you, is that we like to call them reasons why we can't. But deep down, we know that they're excuses. That was true of this story. They all had reasons, but really they were excuses. So let's carry on with this story just to find out a little bit more of what Jesus was trying to say. So the servant goes back and he tells the master, and the master is mad. He is furious. Because why? He has invested so much into this, and people have just decided, nah, not today, thank you. And instead of doing what many of us will do, well, I'm not going to do that again. Fold his arms and say, stuff that. If that's the way that people are going to treat me, I'm not going to do anything for them. No, he doesn't. He says, no, we're still having this. This is still going to be good. It's just not with them. So he sends them out to find more people. And I love how Jesus tells this story, because this goes against these religious leaders who think they were plenty good enough, because he sends the servants or his staff out to the people who would definitely not be seen as good enough. He says, all right then, go quickly into the streets and the alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And when there's still room, he says, then this, go further. He says, go out into the country lanes behind the hedges and urge everyone you find to come, so that the house will be full. And this is it. Suddenly, all of those people who felt that they might be left out, excluded because they weren't good enough, because they weren't loved enough, because they weren't valued enough, suddenly found themselves not only invited, but enjoying the best barbecue ever. Loving the band, going woo with the fireworks. I tell you, they were having the time of their life. Jesus is telling this story because, well, I love this, because God's heart is for the people who don't think they deserve an invitation from him. The ones society overlooks, the ones religion writes off, the ones who know that they're not good enough, the ones who have nothing to offer but just themselves. And here's the big idea of Jesus' story. This is the point that Jesus was making. If you get nothing else from today, Okay, just remember this, because this is at the heart of the story that Jesus told. That God's invitation is for everyone, but not everyone will say yes. And saying yes isn't just believing. It's not just believing in God. No. It's showing up. You know, those people who made the excuses in the story of Jesus, those people, they believed the banquet was happening. Of course they did. They just didn't show up. And because they didn't show up, they missed out. And they discovered, by that end phrase that Jesus said of that story, that there were no doggy bags available from the banquet afterwards. Because Jesus said in his story that none of them would taste anything from the banquet. So in going through this story, there were three things I just want to conclude on that I want us just to think about of this story that will help us to understand, one, a bit more about who God is, but also what our response needs to be. The first one is this, is that the invitation is generous. The banquet guests didn't have to pay anything for the food. They just had to come. Why? Because it was all paid for by the host. And that's what we've sung about today. This is amazing grace. That's what this word means. Amazing grace. That God has prepared for you and for me a relationship with Jesus involving forgiveness, involving joy, involving love, enjoying peace and strength, eternity with him. And none of us have done anything to earn that. We haven't had to do anything. God has done it all through Jesus. It's all been paid for by Jesus when Jesus died and rose again. All of that has been paid for. And so therefore, the invitation from God to be in relationship with him, to know him, and to experience the good that he wants to do in our lives is a free gift. And what he says to you this morning is this: it's ready, so it's time to come. When I took my dad's funeral a couple of months ago, just near the end of the message which I spoke at that, I talked about my dad's life, and I said how attractive my dad's life was, because his life was so full of joy, but he was so secure in knowing who God was, knowing what Jesus had done for him, and had the Holy Spirit living inside of him. So I said this, I said, to live a life of love, knowing that you're loved more than you will ever comprehend, and to live with confidence that there's life beyond this one, where there is no pain, there is no sorrow, there is no death. And to really know God and be empowered by his presence day in and day out. And to live with the knowledge that whenever we mess up, God's forgiveness is always available. I just said to people, I said, who wouldn't want to choose that? Who doesn't want to experience that? Honestly, the offer that he gives to us is so incredible. And yet we don't choose it. We don't choose it. The invitation is so generous, and it's for all of us. The second one is this, is that excuses are easy and they're expensive. Remember, the people in the story weren't choosing evil. They were choosing other good things. It's just that the enemy of the best thing in your life is often the good things that can take its place. And so, sometimes the most dangerous threat to your faith and to mine isn't sin, it's distraction. It's not rebellion, it's busyness. We just get caught up in other stuff. We get distracted. And listen, if God's calling you to spend time with him, maybe he's calling you to get involved in serving him in some way. Maybe he's calling you to take a step of faith in saying yes for the first time. Stop waiting as if life's going to slow down so you'll suddenly have time to be able to do all of that. Okay, this is a spoiler. Life will not slow down. It just doesn't. The third thing from this story is what is God inviting you? What is God inviting you to right now? What is it? For some of you, he's inviting you to find out more. He's saying, come on, this is new to you. I understand that. Then you come and find out more. If so, can I encourage you to come back next Sunday and the following Sunday? In fact, look to see if you can commit Sundays through till Christmas. And just to be able to be a part of a church community where you can learn a little bit more. And you're under no pressure to do anything with it. But it helps you to understand. Or you can sign up for Alpha. We run a thing called the Alpha course. Runs for 10 weeks. It meets in Sarah and my house. And we watch a video. And then we just talk. And we talk about questions and thoughts of what we've watched. For some of you, it's saying, God is saying, inviting you to say yes to him. That you've never done that. And he's saying, come on, now's the time. You know enough. You haven't got to keep putting it off any longer. I love you. And my invitation for you is to become a child of mine. And you just have to ask the question, what is stopping you? What's the barrier from taking that step of faith? It's not a leap. You know enough to be able to say, okay, God, I'm going to choose to trust you. I'm going to choose to follow you. I'm going to choose to accept that what you say is true. And for others, God's invitation, well, he's been nudging you to do something for a while and you haven't done anything about it, and he invites you to pick it up and to do it today. He might invite you to forgive someone. He might invite you to step into a serving role, or to give and live generously, or to obey him on something that he's been reminding you of several times. His invitation is a good invitation, and it's for all of us. And here's the thing about God's invitation. It's this, that an invitation has an RSVP date on them. Yeah, when Sarah and I get invitations to weddings, we always put our invitations on our mantelpiece, and we see them on the first day, and then we just completely forget that they're there. But all of them will have an RSVP. And so the most common message that I send to people, I'm really sorry that we're late in responding, blah, blah, blah. An RSV nearly always has a date on it. And so all I would say is, don't assume that you can get to God's invitation later. Later isn't promised. Which is why when God invites us to come, we need to act, we need to show up. And when we do, we discover what an amazing, powerful, loving, compassionate God that he is. And he's God through the Holy Spirit who comes to live within each one of us. So with Jesus' story, he invites you to a banquet. There's a chair which has got your name on it. The question is, to his invitation, how are you going to answer him? Martin.